The excellent Michael Knowles.
Thank you for using the proper pronunciation of that title.
Oh.
Mr. Shapiro, he does not pronounce it correctly.
How does he pronounce it?
What would they say?
He says something with a couple extra letters, and I don't know, it sounds almost I don't know.
Oh,
but
okay.
excellent is the proper
Excellent Michael Knowles. And since we're on the topic of Ben Shapiro, I was wondering if maybe we could just start this off by you reacting to this little clip we have right here, okay?
Yeah.
Just letting us know your thoughts.
Okay.
Free association. Michael Knowles.
I was going to say good Catholic. He's not as good as me, but he's, mediocre Catholic.
And mediocre person. I mean, I think we can agree on that. I mean, Knowles is a discredit to the company, and he's execrable. It's not my free association. I really shouldn't be sounding off.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, he's just awful. I mean, the fact is that Knowles has somehow been able to make a career out of being a complete empty vessel, and it's incredible to me. And all the stuff where he's not an empty vessel, whenever he talks about it, I mean, my goodness, have you heard him go on for like an hour about Aquinas? It's really just, it's pretty terrifying.
So I like, by the way, I like here how Ben says I'm an empty vessel, and then I just pontificate for hours about St. Thomas Aquinas, the greatest theologian ever to walk the earth. You know where it comes from, though, especially the empty vessel phrase.
Where does it come from?
Mr. Shapiro, my friend of many years, he wrote a lot of books when he was a young man. He started writing his first book, I think he was in the womb. And then I come along, it's about the year 2017, and I published a book called, a masterpiece actually, called Reasons to Vote for Democrats, a Comprehensive Guide. And it didn't have any words in it. And that book, at the time, since then Ben has sold a lot of books. I think at the time, my book without any words may have sold more than all of Ben's books that he put a lot of time and effort and words into. And he was not happy about that. But then there was one other. This is something that really got Ben. 2016. The election. Hillary Clinton was supposed to win. Ben is Mr. Data. Ben is Mr. Facts. All of the polls said Hillary Clinton was going to win. Now, I'm a little bit more, when it comes to politics, a little bit more about intuition. And I said, I don't know if I believe that the Wicked Witch of the West is actually going to be elected president. And Trump, he's kind of a weird guy. He's a big celebrity, though, for 40 years. I don't know. And Ben said, okay, Knowles, I'll give you 4-1 odds. 4-1 on a $100 bet that Trump is going to lose. I said, okay, I don't know if I'd take even odds, but 4-1, I'll take, sure. Okay, Ben. And I now have a check framed in my office at home, crumpled up because he crumpled it and threw it at my head, but it's now framed, $400. And he said in the memo it was for ignoring data. I think that was the beginning, the origin story of Ben's frustration.
So I'm curious, when you made this book, there's no words in it. It's just blank pages. How much did you make on a book like that? Is that technically now a New York Times bestseller?
Well, it is certainly a bestseller. It is not a New York Times bestseller.
And why is that?
They wouldn't acknowledge it?
They would not acknowledge it. Now, the book, when I say a bestseller, I mean a #1 Amazon bestseller. And there are a lot of books that claim to be that.
Sure.
Because they'll say, well, in the category of Norwegian fantasy troll fiction, I'm the #1. But this was the #1 Amazon bestseller in all of books for 11 days.
And what was in the book?
So the book, I can't say it had 0 words.
Okay.
It had a very limited number. It opened up with an epigraph from Thucydides, the ancient Greek historian. And the epigraph said, this is not an effort to win the applause of the moment, but a contribution for all time. Because my book was not just for the 2016 cycle. It remains true every election cycle. And then it had about 10 chapters or so on economics, on civil rights, on immigration, on foreign policy, of all the reasons to vote for Democrats. Now, those chapters were completely blank. They did not have any words in it. But then, at the end of the book, I had a very, very extensive bibliography. I cited all of my sources, modern, medieval, ancient. And I think that the book was very persuasive. To answer your question about the money, I made a lot of money on that book. I sold hundreds of thousands of copies of this book. I don't even know what the number is at this point. I don't think it's 1 million yet, but it might be getting up there.
Sure.
I self-published it. So it cost me
Wow.
nothing to do this
Oh
book.
my gosh.
And it wasn't like a stunt, meaning I actually just did it to irritate my friends and relatives.
Yeah.
I didn't expect to make a ton of money. And then I see the thing starts ticking up. I was having a cigar with Jeremy, the God King Boring over here,
Okay.
and we're refreshing Amazon, and it's, number 20,000. Oh, that's pretty good. Number
Yeah.
20,000 on all of it. Then it's number 5,000. Then it's number 500. Then it's number 20 or something. So Fox News called me, asked me to go on the morning show the next day. I said, okay. I wake up for the morning show. This is LA time. And it's number 6. I do the morning show. I go back to sleep, 4 a.m. or something. I wake up, it's number 1. And it stays at number 1 forever. So here's where the real money kicked in. I get a request from Simon & Schuster to purchase the rights to my
No
nothing,
way.
to my nothing. And so I sort of thought, well, do they know that they could just kind of do it?
Yeah,
I can't
What
sue them.
protects someone else from taking your idea, doing the exact same thing, copying it, making it a little different?
Well, they could do it for Republicans.
They could do it. I know. Maybe
Right.
I should have played both sides.
You
I
should
could have
have.
doubled my money. I wasn't mercenary.
Does that exist on the other side?
Yeah, there were a bunch of copycats who all tried to do it, but they didn't. The libs, man.
It's the essence of it.
Yeah, they also just aren't.
You're first to market.
You
It's
gotta be
really
first to
an
market.
advantage.
It's got to be really high quality. It's hard to make nothing high quality, but the cover needs to look like a real cover. The epigraph has to be a good epigraph.
Right.
It has to, it has to be a little subtle to it.
Right.
And the libs, they did all these, it was like 10 reasons why I hate that dumb idiot Donald Trump or whatever. I said, that's not even the joke, man. You're not getting it, And so it was number 1.
Yeah.
Simon & Schuster tries to buy it. I talk to Jeremy. I say, hey, man, Simon & Schuster's offering me I think it was like 25 grand to buy the rights, plus then royalties. I thought, I didn't have a lot of money. I'm a young guy. I say, this is great, right? And Jeremy says, no, you can't take it. So what do you mean I can't take it? He goes, 25 grand is not funny. I said, no, it's funny to me, man. It's pretty good. He goes, no, it's got to be at least 6 figures. You need at least a 6-figure advance on your fake book for it to be funny. I said, oh. Then I get a request from another publisher, St. Martin's. Then Ben, though he was upset about how great the book was doing, he then, because of his masochism, decided to give me his book agent to help negotiate the deal. So he said, okay, Knowles, I'll set you up with this agent.
Yeah.
You can negotiate a contract for nothing. I tell the agent it's got to be 6 figures. He said, all right. They negotiated all the way up. We get the deal. But the publishers just didn't get the joke. So they said, okay, well, Michael, the one thing you can't do is make fun of us for giving you a bunch of money for nothing. I said, why'd you give me the money then? The whole reason to do this is that's how you get more media and it'll be funny. They won't do it. So the sales start to decline. They say, we got to turn this around. I said, okay, put me back on Fox. So I go back on Fox. We had already done the shtick about the book. So they asked me, it's just something about, I think it was Trump's policy in Syria, maybe. And I complimented Trump. In those days, Fox and Friends had a big audience, but there was only one audience member who counted. And that was the man sitting in 1600 Pennsylvania who happened to be watching that morning. And so I go off the show, I go take a little nap at the office, and I wake up as my phone explodes because Trump had tweeted out, Reasons to Vote for Democrats by Michael J. Knowles, a great book for your reading enjoyment. And then it goes right back up to number 1. and then the New York Times won't acknowledge it. Okay, fine. I'm offered another book contract. I say, well, what do you mean another book? What have I ever done that would give you the impression I can write a book with words? People were offering me book contracts. So I finally take one years later.
Yeah.
I write this book and I realized this had to be a pretty good book because otherwise the headline would say Knowles should stick to what he knows,
Nothing.
right? And it would have been a disaster. So I really put a lot into this book. And the book hit number 1 on the Publishers Weekly list, which is tied to actual book sales. It sold 18,000 copies the first week or something. I outsold the number 1 New York Times bestselling book by like 40% that week. Nowhere on the list. Even with my book with words, nowhere on the list would the lying fake news New York Times put me on their list. So
What was the second book?
that was called Speechless. So the first book,
I love that. Great name.
thank you. It was a
Creativity,
little,
yeah.
just a little nod. there.
Yeah, sure.
So the first book had no words. The second book was entirely about language. And I actually didn't know how the second book was going to sell because it was not just a usual right-wing polemic. I think had it been a usual right-wing polemic, how to own the libs and so can you, it would have sold reliably very well. But this one was a little different because it was a book about free speech. But at the time, all the conservatives were defending free speech in this grandiose, absolutist kind of way. And my book actually disagreed with that. And my book said, no, free speech absolutism, that's a liberal idea. That's not a very conservative idea. Actually, all societies have a right to standards and norms. I don't think you should just be able to go scream whatever you want in the street, even if it's offensive or obscene or fraudulent or whatever. The question is not a battle between censorship and free speech. The debate is actually between two competing sets of standards. So the question is not how much should we be allowed to say? The question is, what are we going to say? Because free speech in the abstract doesn't mean anything to people who have nothing to say.